Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. It's Rafael Gutierrez again. And today I wanted to talk a little bit more on fact or fiction. But before I did that, I wanted to talk about trying to do another live presentation. The idea is hopefully some people will have questions and they'll be able to answer it. And what I'm going to talk about is the bone and cartilage and how people damage it. Now, eventually my goal is to do pretty much a series of this where you can learn basic anatomy to get a better understanding of how the human body works, why you may want to do certain things, why you may want to do some other things. And that's actually one of the big goals. I will admit I love teaching, and so this is one of the ways I can do it. And this way I can teach what I like to teach, and I'll actually explain that later when I go into the fact or fiction. And I am doing it live without people knowing when I'm doing it, just because so I get used to doing this live. So I get used to talking live to a camera rather than to a group of students. Now, one of the things I was going to tell you is this. I wanted you to think about who teaches you what and why it's important. And I'm going to explain to why it's important. Now, let's say you're going to a martial arts studio where one person teaches you 100 different arts. I want you to think about this. How many arts can one person really teach well? I will say for me, I teach pretty much 2 arts, and I do incorporate little things that I learn along the way, but I will never say that, I'm going to teach every martial art known to man, because I can't. And if I could, there would be a lot of things missing. And so that's one of the big things is who's teaching you what, and what do they have to show that they know what they're teaching you. Now, there are some martial arts where this is actually pretty simple. If you take something like, let's say, MMA, you have people who have actually competed in MMA, done great, and they can say, I teach MMA because I won so-and-so tournament. Now, that's not me. I've never competed in that. But someone who does teach MMA, that would be a good thing for them to be able to say. In traditional martial arts, a lot of times we talk about who our teachers were. And that does say a lot about us. And there's sometimes some clashing. I actually was reading a book on who inherited Miyagi-sensei's style. And there were, I think there were 10 people who potentially could say that they inherited the style. But what we find is a lot of the other styles were saying, no, it's not him, it's this. And this person doesn't have the right to actually say they inherited. And so it becomes a kind of mess. Now you think about it, the reason someone wants to say that they learned from someone, a lot of times is because that person carries weight. And unless you're doing something unusual, unless you're actually going to MMA and competing and saying, yes, it works based on my experience there, really, it's hard to get a reputation for being great at martial arts. There are some people who you'll actually notice they may have a great punch. And that's actually what they're known for. A lot of people know for that. And they teach styles which throw great punches. If you think about it, a professional boxer may actually be able to do that. And again, they actually have the name recognition. They have the competition that can say, yes, I punch hard based on this. Some people actually can do other things. You can measure and give numbers. But for a lot of us, and there's a laundry done, a lot of us, we actually teach something based on what someone else taught. And that actually becomes really important for a lot of us. But there's so much more to it. And martial arts, especially traditional martial arts, have to change because it's no longer the same world. Very few of us get reputations for doing something outside of a studio. A lot of actually great instructors, they don't have a reputation for going out in the street and defending themselves. They are great instructors and they teach what their teachers taught. Now, that's not a bad thing, but it does limit something. Without getting more information, without actually seeing other sides to do stuff, what we end up doing is we end up getting a stagnant martial art. The martial art pretty much becomes a museum piece. And that's fine if that's what people are trying to get. But if you want to have a martial art that's applicable, if you want a martial art that actually works, you have to go and look at what else is happening. You have to actually go to sciences, anatomy, physiology, uh, clinical anatomy, obviously anatomy, and you actually have to see what is really happening. A lot of times you can use this stuff to look at other martial arts, other sports, and see how injuries occur. And maybe actually by seeing certain injuries, sports can actually adapt to make it more, well, safer. So there are a lot of things we can use. Now, who's teaching you? I want you to think about this. Imagine you have a grand instructor who says, well, I can teach you uh, kickboxing and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Taekwondo and wrestling and fencing and Filipino martial arts. What you end up with is someone who says they know everything, but how deep can you really know that? Again, if you think of stuff like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you go to tournaments, you can show that you know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is based on did you win or not. Now, for most people, they don't know the difference. Let's be honest, most person who comes into a dojo, if someone says, yeah, I'm a world champion, they get, ooh, he's a world champion. And it doesn't, it doesn't mean anything. It could be the guy who had a world championship out of his garage. But the thing is, a lot of times people who are teaching you aren't necessarily teaching you what they know. There's only a certain amount. Well, they teach you what they know, but they can't go beyond what they have experienced. If you do want to learn judo, for instance, you want to go to someone who's trained in judo. And there are ways to actually find out. For instance, there is paper. A lot of us have actually certificates from our teachers saying that we are recognized to teach a certain thing or that we are a certain rank. And that actually only really is important within styles. I think if you look at someone who's a 5th degree black belt on one style and he goes to another style, it may be completely different curriculum. What's interesting is as I was thinking about this, I actually went back to a book I enjoy, Urine or Fish. And I remember one of the things he said about when he started teaching anatomy, and it was that he was a paleontologist who had spent most of his career working on fish. And what he did is he taught anatomy at a medical school. Now I want you to take a step back and think about this. This gentleman has a PhD in fish biology, and he's teaching the human body. This is a medical school. Now, I was reading his book. I know that he went in and did a lot of research to make sure that everything that he was teaching was applicable for medical students. But I will say, as a community college professor, I have found that that's not always the case. Sometimes people get a professor who hasn't studied the topic, and what they do is they get a job teaching, let's say, anatomy because someone needed anatomy, and they get the PowerPoints that the book companies give you. Actually, by the way, if you have a professor and all they do is read PowerPoints, that's actually a lecture that was given to them by the publisher of the book. They really don't know what they're talking about. They're just reading slides. Like some of them may actually know but a lot of them don't need to know anything. You think about it, if I'm over here reading slides to you, what do I really have to know? It's great, especially if I don't let you ask questions. That's usually the sign of someone who doesn't know what they're doing. So here's actually the sad part is a lot of times we look at education for, okay, well, these people know something different. They have a degree, they have a title, they have something that says that they're qualified to teach. And just like martial arts, a lot of times people are given positions, not necessarily because of what they know, but because they needed a job, they decided to teach that, and now they've been teaching it for so long that they believe they know what's going on. I will tell you, here in San Diego, I had an argument with someone who was talking about a certain part of a bone. I still remember the thing. It was the styloid process of the ulna. Ulna, by the way, is this bone. And he was telling me that this lump here is a styloid process. By the way, he did teach at a university here, and he had been teaching that for, I don't know, something like 7 years. Styloid process is actually a little farther in. It's not on the bump. It's actually over here. The big bump is the head. Styloid process, that means pen-like. And so he was actually teaching his students the wrong information. So it does happen in universities, it happens in colleges, and it does happen in dojos. A lot of people teach things that they are not qualified to teach. And as a student, as someone who enjoys the subject, it's actually our responsibility to see if the person who's teaching us knows what they're doing. If you're a college student and you're taking a class and you wonder what the professor is, you can actually Google a lot of professors and see if they're actually qualified to teach your class. Now, a lot of times it doesn't matter. They needed a warm body to read a PowerPoint to you, and that's pretty much what they used. And like in martial arts, you do have people who they need to teach something, and so they claim to teach other things. So if you're looking for a martial arts instructor and they're claiming, well, I'm a great MMA fighter, Google them, see what they've done in MMA. It's actually a responsibility you have for yourself to make sure that you're actually getting facts rather than opinions. That's at least my opinion. I wish it was a fact. I hope you enjoyed this, and remember, I actually do want to do another live presentation. This one will be on the tissues of cartilage and bone and why certain types of training may actually damage both. I think it's December 10th is a Saturday, and I'll probably do it at 3 p.m. I'll talk about it more in the next video. I usually give the Pacific Standard Time just because I'm in California and it makes it easy for me. But I figure 3 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, Saturday, I think it's January 10th would be the time I would do it. I hope you enjoy this and have a nice day.